So we left it with Yanai and Elazar ben Qallir or Qallir. There's a not 100% sure. Some people say Qallir or Qallir. Was another poem from the tradition of the land of Israel, so not Babylonian. Who was supposedly, I'm not sure if that is factual or not, or is it how do you say, anecdotal? But in any case, there's a tradition that Elazar ben Qallir was a student of Yanai, which is possible. Now, the question was that people struggled with. They heard about Yanai, but until we found the Cairo Geniza and we found work of Yanai, we had no idea. It was just like, it seemed to people who had read about him how wonderful and amazing of a poet he was. It seemed that he just had vanished off the face of the earth. So, as Herb brought up last week, there are on the evening of the Pesach Haggadah 2 poems that, and we spoke about one of them last week at the end of the class, that are sung, which are written by Yanai, but people didn't know was Yanai. So until we've discovered that, it felt to people that we hear the greatest things about this wonderful poem, but he disappeared. And so people were wondering what happened to him. And here we get to the second slide. And maybe somebody wants to read this slide. Herb, you're not muted. I see one of the few. Maybe you want to read this one. It's I think you find it interesting, but you probably know this already. Go ahead.
There is a story that Yanai's poetry disappeared because of a divine punishment for killing his student Elazar ben Qallir.
Yes. So the idea is, how is it possible that he vanished from the face of the earth? It must be a divine punishment. Wow, that has to be very serious. Oh, he killed his student Elazar ben Qallir. Yes.
Out of jealousy for Qallir's higher skills and greater success. Qallir was definitely the highest successful.
Yeah, you prefer Qallir, right? Okay, great. Although, yeah, so that's what a true poet would do, right? Artists are brutal. They're like politicians. Go ahead.
According to this story, Yanai put a scorpion in Qallir's shoe. However, it is more likely that Yanai's work became obsolete after the Babylonian one-year cycle for reading the Torah went out.
So yeah, what we now know after the discovery of the Cairo Geniza, that Yanai wrote poetry that was to be inserted in the first 3 blessings of the Amidah, and for every week connecting to the parasha, and this is a repetition of what we spoke about 2 weeks already in a row, every parasha, he wrote a different form of the Amidah, which the prayers were then interwoven with the parasha. But because Yanai was part of a tradition we don't have anymore, the tradition of the land of Israel, as opposed to the Babylonian tradition that we now all follow. The Babylonian tradition, reading the whole Torah, dividing the Torah in, let's say, 50 sections, 50 weeks. So you read the whole Torah in one whole year. The tradition of the land of Israel, also called Palestinian Judaism, would divide it in 3 years. So you read the Torah in whole 3 years. As a result, the portions are smaller. It's like equivalent to two aliyot for us. It's like a third, right? And so, but his cycles and the divisions of the parashot were different. By the way, I never mentioned this. There are Ashkenazim who they don't talk about parsha, they talk about sidra, right? The sadra of the week. So parasha really refers to the Torah portion from the tradition that the Torah is divided to be read over 1 year. Now, the smaller portions, those were not called parasha, those were called sidra. So when you say sidra, originally, that is a portion of the 3-year cycle. That's really the original meaning of the word sidra. I have spoken about, I've used the term parasha, also speaking about the tradition of the land of Israel, of Yanai and Qallir, but I should have said sidra, if I was really correct. And only that should only be used for that cycle. And then that's the original, the historical meaning of the word. Okay. So,
I want to add something.
Sorry?
I just wanted to add something. I wanted to add something about Qallir.
Okay, we're not done with him, but absolutely go ahead.
Qallir is mostly involved with the holidays, not the Sedra of the Torah. It's the holidays. It's the 3 festivals and the Tisha B'Av. That's where his greatness is. When you come to the synagogue on Sukkot, all of those Hoshanas, they're all Qallir. Qallir and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, it's all Qallir. This is where his greatness is, and that's why he's more famous than Yanai. Yanai is Torah. Qallir is what you daven every day and on the holidays. That's why he shines.
Well, it is possible that he also wrote for the connected to the parasha, but that these ones are lost and the ones for the holidays are still used and therefore preserved. It's possible. In any case, he was preserved more, and so Yanai became obsolete because that cycle isn't used anymore. So it would be impossible to apply that Yanai's liturgy in the current practice. So let's continue. I don't have a lot of Qallir, but because we never got to him, briefly I want to do something about him. Now let me ask Vivian to read this.
Thanks. Hi. Elazar ben Qallir, also called Elazar Qallir, was a nice student. He too belonged to the Palestinian Jewish community. Most likely, he lived in the south of Italy. Qallir's poetry was much more complex. He created many neologisms, for which he was later criticized, especially by the Andalusian poem.
So, neologisms, is that how you pronounce it? Neologisms, yeah. That, of course, those are new words, right? That he invented. He invented new words in the Hebrew language, yes?
And Solomon del Medio said about Qallir, he arbitrarily cut up the Hebrew language. Many of Qallir's poems are still used in the Ashkenazi liturgy.
Yeah, so Sephardim not. It's probably because we're stuck up about this classical Hebrew style, which we're going to talk about later in the course. But there was a movement in Sephardi Judaism to strive to use a pure Hebrew that was, I'm not saying identical, but similar to biblical Hebrew. And therefore, so because Qallir and Yanai too, but who cares about him anymore because he was lost at the time, they actually changed the Hebrew language and were definitely not as makpid, as precise about the grammar, and also made words that are basically almost that are not really classical and that just made for the poetry. So he was criticized for that. Sephardim have followed the insights of the later Middle Ages, starting, well, from, let's say, after Saadia Gaon, so let's say the year 900/1000, beginning then. And Qallir and I are earlier, of course. So there was a different insight in how the Hebrew language should be used. So Ashkenazim, not so concerned with grammar, I thought this is beautiful, this is wonderful. We're going to still use this. This is classic. And the Sephardim said, no, we want to purify the language, and that was partially to compete with the Arabic language. But we're going to be talking about that another time. Now I have one poem of Qallir before we move to others, but I could not find the Hebrew original. So I've been trying, and if somebody has it, it would be great. It's a poem about for Sukkot. And this was an interesting translation. Was the translation itself is poetic. That's kind of nice. It was translated by a Mrs. Henry Lucas, 1894. I never heard of this lady before, but she had some poetic gift, and she tried her hand on a Qallir poem. So let's go to Margot. Would you like to read this loud and clear?
Hymn for Sukkot. Thy praise, O Lord, will I proclaim in hymns unto thy glorious name. O thou Redeemer, Lord and King, redemption to thy faithful bring. Before thine altar they rejoice with branch of palm and myrtle stem. To thee they raise their prayerful voice. Have mercy, save, and prosper them.
Yeah, we'll continue.
Mayst thou in mercy manifold dear unto thee thy people hold, when at thy gate they bend the knee and worship and acknowledge thee.
Can I say something? I briefly had mentioned it, but the Jews, the tradition of the Jews of the land of Israel, so in contradiction to the Babylonians, bend the knee. They used to kneel on a daily basis during their prayers. So it's interesting that this is not just poetry, as we say, "V'anachnu mishtahavim," we say it, but we don't do it. These people actually did this. They actually bent. They bowed down, prostrated, right, in their prayer. Continue.
Do thou their heart's desire fulfill, rejoice with them in love this day, forgive their sins and thoughts of ill, and cast their transgressions, and their transgressions cast away.
Yeah, the last one.
They overflow with prayer and praise to him who knows the future days. Have mercy thou, and hear the prayer of those who palms and myrtle bear. Thee day and night they sanctify, and in perpetual song adore. Like to the heavenly host they cry, blessed art thou forevermore.
Yeah, so it sounds really poetic in English too, which is kind of cool. Although there are some people here from foreign lands, from Holland, from I see Nairobi now here, Israel, different places. For them, if you're not a native speaker of English, or if you haven't immersed yourself really deeply in the English language, this might still be not intelligible, hard to understand. So maybe this translation needs a translation. Could be, but I hope you get the feeling for it. This is all the Qallir that I have. I don't have any prayer books that have him, so I could try the Hebrew and make my own translation. Maybe one day in the future we'll do that. But that for now, this has to be Qallir. And this was to wrap it up. We're going after this, unless there's any questions or remarks. No, I guess not. I was holding my breath for just a second. So we'll go to a later period of time. Shefatya ben Ammittai. So once again, the same idea. We do not really know when these people in this early history, when they lived. People, first of all, if you go back earlier in time, the records there's no real records. You have to try to figure it out based on events. And with these poets especially, we don't have their biographies. We don't know much about their lives, what they lived through, if they encountered a war, that we know which date it was, and then we can figure things out. We just have their poems. So it's very hard from the context of the poem to figure out what date they might have lived. But we think, I'm just saying, around 880, this might be roughly when the poem we're going to discuss was written. And it follows that he must have lived in that year. So if this is all correct, then this is the end of the 9th century. Let's say that. Now, let's go a bit back into look at the cultural backdrop of what we're discussing. We were saying that The Byzantine Empire was so huge at the time when we spoke about Yanai, and I showed you a picture of that. Now, you see, Islam has come on the scene, and this is the big Umayyad Empire. This purple part, this, you see, wiped away lots of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire had included not here Mesopotamia, not Iraq, because that was, and Persia, that was part of the Persian Empire, but here Syria, Palestine, Egypt, North Africa, that was all largely Byzantine. Even South Italy is Byzantine, even part of North Italy. Look at even Rome for a part belonged to the Byzantine Empire, not the Western Roman Empire, but so very interesting. Only but this is at the biggest part. It looked almost that the Byzantine Empire could take over the old Roman Empire, were it not that the Muslims actually threw a wrench in that scenario. So you see that the Byzantines had been shrinking, and they would shrink further, and so what always happens when an empire is growing, it's confident, it's comfortable and confident. It feels like, we're doing fine, we're doing well. And an empire that is on the rise and that is doesn't feel any threat, doesn't feel it's squeezed or threatened in its existence, will be tolerant to minorities, because it doesn't feel threatened in its identity. But when an empire starts shrinking, it becomes more paranoia. It becomes nervous about, there's enemies everywhere. Maybe there's enemies inside. So they're going to be very suspicious for minorities too. This in the Umayyad Empire, and later the Turks, when that shrunk, also the Turkish Ottoman Empire also started becoming, much later, of course, in history, started becoming more repressive to their minorities. And that is a feature that you see all over history. Now, here, the Umayyads were on the growth, were on the upmarch, but the Byzantines were shrinking. That means that the Byzantines were uncomfortable. And so, faced with the Muslim enemy, I'm just reading, the desire towards unity in the empire became stronger. You want to be united. The worst thing you can have in such a situation is to be divided. If you're big enough, you can, and comfortable enough, you can have your discussions, and you can have hot debates and parties that really can't stand the light in the eyes of the other. But if you're divided, if you're under threat, no, you have to be one. So these emperors, these Byzantine emperors, started repressing their minorities, and of course the Jews are prominent among these. Now I'm going to give two examples of repressive emperors, and those were definitely not the only one, but two that stand out. So a particularly intolerant emperor was Leo III. He reigned from 717 till 741. Why was he so repressive? Well, in 722, like 5 years after he got on the throne, he ordered that all Jews in his empire should be baptized. So no more this nonsense of this minority. We all want to be one religion. That's it. And so this exceptional position that the Jews have has to be over already. Was that the end of Judaism? No, because, well, this person lived, let's say, for 24 years. When you have another emperor with another policy that then allows Jews to practice their religion again, okay, so you can outlive that. Of course, there's always people who say, okay, we're not going to go back and forth. I changed once, I'm not going to change twice. That you always lose some people, but that was it. Okay. What's an interesting thing about Leo III, we know, look at Putin sniffing his icon, but so we know that the Byzantines have these icons, right? And Catholics have even statues that they revere. But Leo purged the church from impurities. And what were impurities? He forbade the worship, the veneration of statues and icons. So, of course, that's a culture clash. Why would he do that? It's clear from history that this was inspired by Islam, because the Muslims were saying to him, "You guys are idol worshippers. You worship images, and don't you know the 10 Commandments that you cannot bow down for any images?" And so he was sensible for that. He thought, you know what? We want to be strong. We want to have a strong religion, but we also have to be a pure religion. No, it has to be the true religion. And he was sensitive to that argument. And he said, yeah, you're right. We have to do away with all idols. And you can imagine there was a culture clash. And the normal people, the normal Christians thought, what? This is for them. That was their holy religion. They thought that this was this for them was heresy. Doing away, we have this beloved icon that has blessed us and always carried this around, and we experienced so many blessings from this, and it has been in the family for so long, and this is the image of the beloved Mother Mary, or who knows what other saints. So the normal people did not go with that. They protested, and also the lower laity, the lower priests and bishops that were close to the people resented this. It was the elitist people, bishops and stuff that could follow, that were actually following these orders. But this for sure did not help the unity of the country. By the way, Leo made one exception, venerating the cross. He said that is different. That is God's vehicle of redemption, and that we can bow down to. But yeah, so that's just an interesting, nothing to do with our poetry. So hold on, I'm going to ask perhaps Abigail, would you like to read a few lines?
Destruction of religious status, iconoclasm, caused revolts all over the empire, especially in the West, in Italy. This resulted in the loss of territory for Leo. After Leo's death, the Jews openly returned to Judaism. Yeah,
those are two separate independent statements, but yeah, so it cost him. So if you look here at this map again, see this northern part of Italy, what we now call Italy, so that was lost to Byzantine, and so people revolted and said, we're not going to follow this heretical king. And as I said, after on a second note, after Leo's death, the Jews could openly return to Judaism, and most people did. Now we'll go to another. Maybe Abigail, I'm going to ask you to read another slide.
Okay. The second notorious example is Emperor Basil I, nicknamed the Macedonian. Basil ruled between 867 and 886. Basil II was interested in strengthening and unifying his empire. He convinced the Bulgars, who had converted to Christianity, to join the Byzantine Church instead of the Roman Catholic Church, thus drawing away influence from the West.
Yeah, so that's why the Bulgarians are traditionally Orthodox. It's called Eastern Orthodox, not Catholic. It's all because of Basil, right? Yeah. So now we're in the time of our Shefatya ben Ammittai here, right here. So that's where we are. So this Basil also wanted to unite the empire, and as you can imagine, maybe he was also nasty to the Jews in that respect. He didn't like minorities. I'll give you one example here, Abigail.
He also persecuted Christian mystical sects called Paulicians.
Yeah, this is an image of the massacre of Paulicians. That was a group that lived in present-day Turkey, which was part of the Byzantine Empire. Interestingly enough, that have nothing to do with Paul from the Bible, also called by Christians Saint Paul. No, it was another Paul, was a preacher. These Paulicians had a lot of Jewish elements. They celebrated Easter always on Pesach. They would, I think they even celebrated the Sabbath, Shabbat, instead of Sunday. They did believe in Jesus, but otherwise no. Otherwise they were very, their practice looked a lot like Judaism. And the next slide, please. Hey, there is some strange lines on this. I have no idea how that got there. Okay, yeah.
Basil's pressure on the Jews became more and more severe. In 873, he forced all Jews to be baptized.
So yeah, here we go again, of course. So I'm sure there were people who refused, who got into deep trouble, perhaps even martyred for it. But we have no statistics. A large group probably went along and thought, you know what, we know from the past, it's quite a while ago that Leo III was there. In one slideshow, it seems that it's just the next week, but this was quite, so hold on, when did Leo live again? Hold on. Yeah, let's say started at 717. And Basil, see, so that is like, say, 150 years ago. It's long, but they might have known about it. So a lot of people might have thought, oh, you know what? Hopefully the same thing will happen as we heard that happened before. Maybe. And other people might have just given in under pressure and just permanently joined Christianity. It's all possible. But so he would be quite oppressive. And then Abigail, we topped this off with one more reading.
Sure. A Christian biographer would write a century later, seeing that there was nothing so pleasing to God as the saving of souls, and not being neglectful in his task, he first drew into his net for submission to Christ the uncircumcised of heart and the stubborn Jewish people. That's
so interesting. This of heart is not there. He just says, that's just my explanation. That's what he meant. It's interesting that an uncircumcised Christian would call the Jewish people uncircumcised. That is turning the world upside down. But in any case, funny. Yeah?
First,
circumcised of heart.
Yeah, but in heart is not in the text. I added that. Yeah. Now, of course, that's what he meant. But still, I mean, if you say the word uncircumcised, even of heart, you have a connotation that being uncircumcised is not a good thing. And to blame that to people who do circumcise themselves from the mouth of somebody who says circumcision is nothing it's just a strange turn of expression. That's a use of expression.
First, he ordered them to come to disputations and to bring proofs of their faith if they believed that it was strong and irrefutable. But if they became persuaded that Christ stood higher than the Torah and the prophets, he ordered them to go over the teaching of the Lord and to be baptized.
Yeah, but what does it mean? They were persuaded, meaning if they could not, if they couldn't come up with in that public disputation, that public discussion, like a how do you say, a public competition in argumentation. If they didn't come with a counter argumentation, that's what he calls persuaded. Like, oh, you don't have an answer now. Okay, now you have to be baptized. That's how he started. Yes. And then we'll go to maybe David. Would you like to read this? Just first unmute.
Unmute?
Yeah, good.
Okay. He offered high appointments to those who so came forward and promised them exemption from the burden of former taxes. He also announced that he would grant official rank to men of no standing. He did thus free many of their cloak of obstinacy and brought them to faith in Christ.
Yeah, he kind of greased their hearts a bit, like, oh, you know what? I'm going to take away your resentment. I'm going to give you great jobs, not because you're qualified for the job. No, because you give up your old religion for Christianity. People of no standing would get official ranks, right? So, and high appointments would be given to people, and tax exemptions for people who would convert to Christianity. So is that good for this unity of the state? Perhaps. Is it good for the state? You're going to have people who are not qualified to run important jobs. Not so sure if the empire would be run better now because of that, but that's what happens. All right. Now we have David. Maybe just continue a bit. We have Yehuda ben David Hayuj, who was mostly known for his grammatical works. By the way, he lived, let's say, the end of the 10th century in Spain. But he also wrote some historical stuff. He wrote about Jewish history, and maybe read a bit more, David, of what he wrote here.
Yeah. How did Basil's agents force them? Anyone who refused to accept their error, Christianity, was placed in an olive mill under a wooden press and squeezed in the way olives are squeezed.
Yeah, not a great way of persuasion. Very effective, perhaps, but not wonderful. Yeah.
The wicked Basil ordered the persecution throughout the whole land and forced more than 1,000 communities to err. There was not a province nor a city which he did not cause to sin.
Yeah, so that's what we're dealing with, this Basil. It was during the oppressive reign of this Basil I that we have a Hebrew poem, and it's called Yisrael Nosha. That was written around that time. So the Shefatya ben Ammittai, I already gave the name. What does he do? What does he write about? He in times of despair, this was a very hard. It's like one of the worst persecutions of the Byzantine Empire. To be honest, the Byzantine Jews were most of the time treated better than the Jews in Catholicism in later Middle Ages. Often they were never in ghettos, for instance. They very much could participate with the general population. The Byzantines never forced the Jews to wear distinctive clothing or badges, yellow badges on their clothing, as later would happen in the West. So most of the time it was better under the Byzantines, but this was a very hard period of time, one of the worst. So he begs in his poem for compassion for his people, to be forgiven any sins that remove them from God's mercy, and for them to be accepted in favor once again. So we're going to look at this poem. Here, this is the first strophe. Who wants to read? Ellie, would you like to read? You can choose the Hebrew or the English, or both.
Thank you. Okay. You can hear me well, yes? Or no?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
ישראל נושע באדוני תשועת עולמים, גם היום יבשעו מפיך שוכן מרומים, כי אתה רב סליחות ובעל הרחמים. Israel was saved by the Lord with eternal salvation. Today too, may they be saved by your word, O you who dwell on high. For you are abundantly forgiving and master of mercy.
Yeah, this last line, Ki ata rav selihot ubal ha-rahamim, you are abundantly forgiving and master of mercies. That's the, the refrain. That is recurs after every strophe. So the strophe is really just 2 lines plus this one. In this case, the rhyme is consistent. Olamim, Muromim, Arahamim. That doesn't occur every time. The first line, Yisrael no Shabbat Onai Tishat Olamim, Israel was saved. Could also mean will be saved, because in poetry, the times, the tenses are not used consistently. So sometimes in the Psalms it looks like a past tense, but it could be present tense. So we cannot take was saved as literally, but doesn't really necessarily mean. In this comes from Isaiah, the first line, and in Isaiah it's probably meant as a future tense. Here it's probably taken as a past tense because in the past Israel was saved by the Lord, but today too. So in this context, it's meant as a literally as a past tense. Today too may you be saved by your word. So this was written probably for Yom Kippur, but it is used, it's sung in the Ashkenazi, in at least some Ashkenazi traditions, in the Selichot before Rosh Hashanah. Do you know this, Herb? Do you know this? Yeah, it's quite well known, right? There is a number of melodies, and we're going to look into that. We'll go to the second one. Now you see the first letter is Shin. I made that bigger and in color. So let me just quickly go to all this, and let's look at the first letters: Shin, Pe, Tet, Yud, He. So that spells Shefatya, which is his signature. We saw that with Yanai. He wrote his signature. Ellie, please indulge us with doing at least one more slide. I'll give you two more if that's okay.
שעריך הם דופקים כעניים ודלים. תיקון לחמש קשוב. קשוב, סליחה. שוכן מעולים, not מעונים, כי אתה רב סליחות ובעל הרחמים. They knock on your gates like poor and destitute people. Listen to the whispering of their heart, O Lord, who dwells in elevated realm. For you are abundantly forgiving and master of mercies.
Yeah, so we had Shochen Meromin. Now we have Shochen Me'olim or Me'ulim. I'm not 100% sure, but it also means from Al, Ya'alet, Ta'alet, high up. So it means the same thing. And some of the words, I don't know. I'm not sure if they might be Chatzun. Do you know what that means?
No.
And Kashub. So the same thing. This is the Byzantine poets. They made up words, and we have to now struggle. What did they mean? We know the last line. You are abundantly forgiving, a master of mercies. The overall meaning is clear. People knock on the gates, knocking on heaven's door. They are poor, and they open the door. Wilma, open the. Okay, sorry. No, not Wilma. This is the Lord in this case. Listen to the whisperings of their hearts. So, so that should give us a clue what it means, because somebody worked on this translation. Well, work on that later, but it's clear. We do one more with Ellie, and then we go to someone else.
פחודים הם מכל צרות, ממחרפיהם ומלוחציהם. נא אל תעזבם, אדוני אלוהי אבותיהם, כי אתה רב סליחות ובעל רחמים. They are frightened from all woes, okay, of those who disgrace and oppress them. Please do not forsake them, O Lord, God of their forefathers. So, and then the usual, they are about.
And the usual. It's a litany of depression, of desperation, of and it seems it's not just asking for forgiveness for sins. It's really for an improvement of the faith of the people, which would be appropriate for the new year, of course, because the new year supposedly is a day, Rosh Hashanah, that would determine the coming year. So it seems appropriate to ask God, look how miserable we are. We are oppressed. We are persecuted. We are killed. And please turn our fate this new year. Let this be a better year, beginning of many more better years. We'll go to, and if the Hebrew is uncomfortable, we can read it in English. It's absolutely no problem. We go, Joel, would you like to read this? The English, probably. Safarin? Yeah.
May your goodness precede them on the day of admonishment, and from the midst of distress, let them find deliverance and relief, for you are abundantly forgiving and master of mercies.
It has a little bit of a hope here already. May your goodness be stronger than your punishment, basically, and on this day, and we have distress. We're in the midst of it, but if we can find deliverance and relief, that would be so wonderful. If you see the rhyme, the end rhyme has changed here. So tocheha, ruaha, and then rahamim. So the first two lines, of course, rhyme with each other. The third one cannot, because it's the same identical one as before. Yes, Joel.
Okay. Do you want me to read another?
Yes, please. I'll do two more.
Okay, I think. May they be saved in the sight of everyone, and let not the wicked rule over them. Let Seir be finished, and his father-in-law, and let redeemers go up to Zion. For you are abundantly forgiving and master of mercy.
Yeah, now, who was Seir again? Do you remember? Does anyone can tell me who Seir is?
Esav,
That's Esav, okay.
Notzrim, the Christians.
Those are the Christians. And before they were the Romans, but the Byzantines were considering themselves as the continuation of the Romans. So there, for the Byzantines, people who live under the Byzantines, there's no difference between Romans and Christians. It's still the same thing. So let him be finished. Make Christianity please end. So it's asking for the end of Christianity, right?
Who is the father-in-law?
What?
Who is the father-in-law?
So who was Seir's father-in-law? Seir, this is very...
Islam.
Huh?
Islam.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hoteno is Islam.
Yes, of course. But you
Yeah,
jumped to the end of the explanation. So Seir first married to Hittite women, and his mother, Esau's mother, Rebecca, was very unhappy. Said, "My life is miserable with these women," and without any restrictions on who to marry and how many wives to marry, then he also married a daughter, or was it two? I'm not 100% sure. A daughter of Ishmael, which at least was kin. He was an Abrahamite, and he was possibly he belonged to the same folk, right? So Seir married a daughter of Ishmael, and Ishmael, of course, is the considered the patriarch of the Arabs, and indirectly then later of Islam. So it basically says that Christianity be finished and Islam as well. That's what it says. It's those are hidden hints to the religions that Jews were suffering under, so to say. So it's overt language, right? You cannot say let these Christians be finished and the Muslims as well. That would be even though it's in Hebrew and these people don't understand Hebrew, but that could leak out very well. But if you say it, oh no, I don't mean the Christians. I mean the Edomites. This is an old prayer from before when the Edomites were our enemy. You can always come up with something else. And you can also say his father, well, he also married Hittite wives. So are we talking about the Hittites, really? Okay. Yeah. So you can get away with that a bit more easier. And then the last slide for Joel.
listen, O Master, to the sound of their outcry, and to the heavenly place of your dwelling. May their prayer ascend, for you are abundantly forgiving and master of mercies.
Yep. Good. So this is the poem. In the traditional liturgies of the Jews from Poland and Germany, this poem is sung during the Slichot prayers, which is before the Jewish New Year. Remarkably, the traditional melody is set to a Byzantine scale. Now, I'm not that musically gifted that I would recognize that from looking at this scribble, but this is what we can do. We're gonna just listen briefly to some to some Byzantine scaled music, which is, this is from the Russian church. And then we're going to see if it sounds familiar and listen to the first strophe of Yisrael Nosha. So here we have, I think this is the Russian Metropolite, that's what it's called, Patriarch. This. So now here we have Yisrael Nosha. Let's see.
Yisrael Nosha Badoshen Tishwa Salamim Gam Hayom Yivamshu Mipicha Shochen Merovim Ki Torah v'selichot uval horachamim.
I hear similarities. Do you?
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a similar style, right? So,
It's really striking.
yeah, oh, it's clear, huh? Yeah. Well, you're a musician, so you, yeah, so, that I don't know how to describe it, but that style. So that's interesting. It's also interesting that we still have that melody from so long ago, because this is the Byzantine scale, and so that has to be at least close to the original melody, because it was written in the Byzantine era. So this must be from the late 800s, this melody, and that is quite remarkable, right? It's something remarkable, in my opinion. Good. So that was Shefatya ben Ammittai. Now we go to somebody whose name is quite similar, Ammittai ben Shefatya. It was his son. So Shefatya, the son of Shefatya, that was the person we spoke about as Ammittai, and Shefatya was the son of Ammittai. So this Ammittai, it's not him, it's just a picture that I chose. We have, of course, no passport photos from these people. But this Ammittai was named after his grandfather. So absolutely. So this is Ammittai, the son of Shefatya, the son of Ammittai. And we still don't have any dates, but shortly after, I would say the beginning of the 900s, and he also wrote a poem. This was quite a very impressive family. Wrote more than just poems, but we're focusing on poetry here. Now, let's see who else is here that I did not give any. Okay, maybe Alicia, would you like to read a slide?
After Basil's death, his son Leo VI, the Wise, succeeded him as emperor. Besides the fact that Leo was bookish.
You mean he was not a macho who liked to go into battles and arm wrestle. He liked to read books.
So he was Yaakov Shochen Ohalim.
Yeah.
Which Basil despised. Basil also suspected that Leo was not his real son, but the son of his predecessor, Michael III, whom Basil had killed to get to the throne.
Yeah, so Michael
What a
III outwitted him by fathering Leo, perhaps.
Mhm.
Okay.
Basil has violently abused, severely beaten, imprisoned, and almost blinded.
Yeah, there's something went wrong with it. Had finally abused Leo. Yeah, sorry.
After
Right,
becoming
Yeah.
After becoming emperor, Leo VI restored religious freedom for the Jews. Okay.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just.
What strikes me is how parallel this is to the Hamlet myth.
Can you say it again?
Yeah.
The relationship to Hamlet is interesting here.
To Hamlet?
Yeah. The,
Yes.
the king who killed his father, the king, and the prince who comes that he doesn't like.
Oh, you know what? I should. This is a flaw in my education because I don't know anything about Hamlet. Well,
In
you know,
Hamlet,
I
Hamlet
didn't
is
grow up
young-
with as much Shakespeare as you did. I grew up with Vondel and other. But
Hamlet is a young prince who comes back to this kingdom. His uncle has killed his father.
Okay, so very, very interesting. Maybe he was inspired by this story. Who knows? But it's
I think
probably
it's
an
an
archetypal kind of a thing. It happens, right?
I
Yeah. Or maybe Basil was just paranoia because he saw Hamlet. I don't know.
The other way around.
Hamlet is
I
around.
know. All right. Yes, Alicia.
Oh, to continue.
Yes, why not?
From around the same time, probably shortly after Basil's death, we have a poem by Shefatya's son. His name was Ammittai ben Shefatya. The poem is called El Air Giborim, to the city of the mighty. The title is a play on a verse from the book of Proverbs 21:22. One who is wise can go up against the city of the mighty and pull down the stronghold in which they trust, meaning wisdom is more powerful than might. In this poem, the wise man is Moses, and the city of the mighty that he enters is heaven. Moses brought down the powerful treasure, the Torah.
According to the Torah, Moses went up Mount Sinai to receive God's instructions, the Torah. Okay, that is basic knowledge. However, there are midrashic stories. Midrashic means outside the Bible, that Moses didn't just go up the mountain, but he went up even further. He went up to heaven. Since the Torah came from God, in order to receive it, he ascended to heaven. That is a story. And we'll go, let's try. Fred, are you able to read this? Willing?
According to this history, there were angels opposed to giving such a precious gift to imperfect humans.
Yeah, the story says the angels didn't like it. That is a midrash. Few midrashim. Actually, even in the Quran, it appears the angels didn't like. There's some similar, not about the Torah, but about giving honor to Adam. So, but it's a similar story. The angels were opposed. Yeah. Yes.
But Moses brought convincing arguments and was able to bring the Torah to his people. It is interesting to note that Byzantine Jewish poetry often used themes for midrash, traditional stories that are not found in the Bible.
Yeah, they were very, very into midrash. So, according to this midrash, to this story, Moses came to receive the Torah, and the angel said, this is whatever. There is a different midrashim. But the angel said, how can you give this pure law to these imperfect people? God, don't give it to them. Keep it here in heaven where it's not broken, where it's not violated. And Moses says, well, do you have a father and a mother? And they say, no, we don't have a father and a mother. And Moses says, well, the Torah says, honor your father and your mother. So is it more appropriate for you or for us humans? to say, yeah, that's true. Do you ever have an inclination to kill each other? No, we are pure. Well, humans do. And the Torah says, thou shalt not kill. So for who is this meant? For humans or for angels? Yeah, you're right. This is for you. So he convinced the angels basically to, in this way, to concede that the Torah was to go down to the earth, to humanity. Fred, do one more, please.
Okay. The poem also contains many themes from Halot mysticism.
Yeah.
Halot means palaces. In this type of mysticism, someone meditates and experiences that his soul goes up to God's. Cannot see the other.
Heavenly palace.
Yeah, heavenly palace. In order to reach the inner chamber of God's heavenly palace, he needs to
go from room to room,
and from gate to gate. At each gate is questioned by a gatekeeping
angel,
an angel who tests if is worthy to proceed. He needs to be wise enough to give the right answers.
As a wrong response would be fatal.
As a wrong response would be fatal. Yes.
This already occurs in the Talmud, by the way, where 4 rabbis go up to Gan Eden and they say, if you see the room of marble, and marble is so smooth that it looks like water, don't say water, because only truth can survive in this. It's the world of truth. If you say something that's untruthful, you're going to be zapped to death, and this is the end of your soul. So you're going to die. So it's a tricky place to go. Now, each strophe of this poem, El Ir Gibborim, ends with the refrain, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord of hosts." These are the words that Moses hears. It is sung by the angels and by other celestial beings who praise God with these very words. The same words the Jewish people use in their liturgy in the prayer called Kedusha. Evidently, this poem was meant to embellish the Kedusha prayer on the festival of Shavuot. The Shavuot is the day on which the receiving of the Torah is celebrated. Nowadays, in some Ashkenazi communities, it is used on the day of Simchat Torah, the day that the Torah is celebrated, not given. So we're going to go through this poem, and that would be the end of today's class. Okay, so let's go back to Abigail. We're going back a few people. Abigail, would you like to read this one?
When the humble man went up to the city of the mighty, Kemuel, the gatekeeper, with his hosts of angels, confronted him. Moses rebuked him, and he fled from him. He walked into heaven as if in the precincts of his neighbors, while from behind the curtain he heard the sound of trembling in his ears, saying, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord of hosts."
Yeah, Adonai Tzebaot. So one of these gatekeepers confronts him, and he tests him, but he wants to stop him. Who are you? But Moses outsmarts him here. And Kemuel is one of these names of these celestial, scary creatures, flees. And so Moses walks in heaven as if it's in his own neighborhood, as if he's taking a stroll. He's so comfortable. He's so holy. He's he does it very well. Do another one, please, Abigail.
When he saw the sight of Hadarniel, he was terrified at his appearance, for he is 800 parasangs taller than his comrade, and 12 lightning bolts emerge from his mouth when he speaks. But finally, he walked ahead of Moses like a disciple before his master, and he heard a celestial voice from the inner chamber of his palace, saying, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord of hosts."
Yeah, Hadarniel is another, even more frightful. 800 parasangs. A parasang is an old distance, a distance of traveling. In different places, a parasang was different, but it's like a few hours traveling, basically. So this is a big-sized angel, so to say. And his speech is particularly frightening, with all these lightning bolts that come out of his mouth. Yes, and one more.
When he saw the form of Sandalphon, pain seized him, for his fire burns torches and coals, and he serves behind the chariot with a crown of praise. When the Almighty is crowned, all the hosts of heaven tremble, and all the foundations of the earthquake and heaven sing, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord of hosts."
Yeah. They all the foundation of the earth quake and heave, basically. Yeah. So this is there's scary stuff, powerful stuff going on. Margot.
The beautiful wings of Galastor have their place opposite the heavenly beasts. So the angels not be burned by the flame of their torch. They hold the flames of the Region River up to human kings, throwing their awe and fear upon all mankind. And from their direction, Moses heard the sound of many waters, saying, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord of hosts."
Now what's happening? Yes, continue.
A dense rain cloud was gathering in their company, a flash of flames and torches as their fire went back and forth. They summoned the Prince of Darkness to join in their assembly. The angel of death leaps to join with them, and all their hosts cry out. They raise their voices and intone with them, saying, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord of hosts."
Now, isn't that something? So even the Prince of Darkness, even Mr. Satan himself, is now joining in praising God. He's like tamed. He's like, turns out that what people fear is actually just is also in line with God's will. So there's nothing to fear. And perhaps for a Byzantine person who is persecuted or knows persecution, maybe saying that evil is maybe not as bad as it seems, and maybe it'll just will be summoned. So all our oppressors are just a tool, and maybe they will be summoned, and eventually everything will be in harmony, and even the dark side and the enemy will join in praising God. I don't know what's behind it. Of course, this is it's a kind of an escapism to focus on these heavenly journeys and on the adoration of God in his presence, even away from this earth. So escaping from the miserable earth in heaven, where things are really the way they should be. So in any case, it's a very impressive poem. And this is where we should end our class. We were already 15 minutes over. So next time, I think I'm going to go to Saadia Gaon, which is very interesting, not so known for his poetry, but there is something there. He started basically, say, a new movement of poetry after the Byzantine period. And then we'll continue next week, God willing, with more poetry, more Hebrew poetry. Everybody, thanks so much, and I hope to have a great week, and hope to see you next week.